My beloved child, there are moments that arrive quietly, yet they carry a weight so deep that everything around them begins to feel different before anyone can explain why. Last night was one of those moments. Something shifted in silence. Even if no one has spoken about it yet, even if the morning appeared ordinary, what happened during those unseen hours has already touched the heart of the person you love deeply. Do not skip, because something huge is waiting for you. You may have noticed a strange distance, a pause in their voice, a slower reply, or a look that seemed both present and far away at the same time. It is not your imagination. Some nights leave marks that words cannot easily describe. Some hours pass like ordinary darkness. Yet they return carrying thoughts powerful enough to rearrange emotions that have remained hidden for a very long time. Last night, while the world slept, that person sat alone with thoughts they had been trying to avoid. There was no crowd around them, no noise, no distraction strong enough to silence what suddenly rose inside their heart. A memory returned without warning. A feeling they believed they had already controlled appeared once again. It was stronger than before, clearer than before, and impossible to ignore. Stay until the end, because what began last night is still unfolding right now. They remembered conversations they never admitted mattered. They replayed moments they once treated as insignificant, only to realize those moments had quietly become unforgettable. A single detail, a voice, a gesture, or a sentence spoken casually returned all at once. Suddenly, the night no longer felt normal. What changed everything was not one dramatic event outside of them. It was what happened inside. For the first time in a long while, they stopped pretending to themselves. That is why the energy around them feels unfamiliar today. That is why, even if they speak normally, something beneath the surface has become heavier, deeper, and more uncertain. When someone finally faces what they have hidden from their own heart, they cannot remain exactly the same the next morning. Do not skip now, because the next part matters more than you think. There was a moment last night when they almost reached for words they have never sent. A moment when they nearly broke the silence they had protected for too long. Their thoughts moved closer to honesty than ever before. Although they stopped themselves, the decision forming inside did not disappear. Something within them has started asking questions they can no longer silence. Why does one person remain in their thoughts, even during the quietest hours? Why does distance suddenly feel heavier than before? Why do ordinary memories now feel like signs that should no longer be ignored? Those questions did not disappear when morning arrived. That is why today carries an unusual weight. When a person begins questioning what their heart has been protecting, change begins slowly, but it begins powerfully. Something huge is waiting for you because the night did not end when the clock moved forward. The night continues through every thought they are carrying now. There is more. A detail appeared last night that they did not expect. It could have been a word they heard, a face they saw, or a reminder they never planned to encounter. Whatever it was, it opened something old and unfinished. Suddenly, what they had kept locked away became impossible to dismiss. In that moment, they understood that pretending nothing matters is harder than admitting something does. This is why their silence means more now than it did before. Silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is where the loudest decisions are formed. Stay until the end, because you have not yet seen where this leads. They may appear calm on the outside, but inwardly they are standing between two powerful directions. One side tells them to remain unchanged. The other tells them that after last night, remaining unchanged may no longer be possible. That inner conflict is stronger than anyone around them realizes, because some realizations arrive only once. Some nights reveal only one truth, but that one truth is enough to alter the days ahead. Last night gave them a truth they were not ready to face. Certain feelings do not disappear simply because they were ignored. They return stronger when the heart becomes quiet enough to hear them. Do not skip, because what you sense now is only the beginning. Even now, while the hours continue moving forward, they are measuring words in their mind. They are imagining possibilities they refused to imagine before. They are wondering whether the silence they maintained truly protected them, or whether it only delayed something inevitable. The person you love deeply may not explain this immediately. They may not even fully understand why they feel different. But the difference is real. Sometimes the strongest change begins before anyone speaks a single sentence. Last night did not create something new. It revealed something that had already been growing quietly for far longer than expected. That is why today feels unusual. That is why what happens next may surprise even them. Something huge is waiting for you. When a heart changes during silence, the next visible step often arrives unexpectedly. What they decide after carrying this night within them may become impossible to ignore very soon. As the morning hours passed, things became even more unusual. Sometimes a person does not understand their own heart immediately. They simply begin noticing that ordinary things no longer feel ordinary. The person you love deeply entered today, carrying thoughts they did not expect to still be holding. Even simple moments felt heavier than before. Familiar places looked exactly the same, yet something inside them reacted differently to everything around them. Do not skip, because this explains why their silence has become more meaningful than anyone realizes. There was a moment today when they paused for no visible reason, a brief pause unnoticed by others, but powerful inside them. In that pause, the memory of last night returned once again. This time it was clearer, not confusion, not uncertainty, but something they could no longer dismiss. They tried to focus elsewhere. They tried to move back into routine. Yet certain thoughts continued returning with unusual strength. That is how true emotional shifts often begin. Not loudly, not dramatically, but repeatedly, until they can no longer be pushed aside. Stay until the end, because something huge is waiting for you. A sentence they once ignored now sounds different in their memory. A moment they once considered small suddenly feels important. Even words they never fully answered now seem to carry new meaning. What changed is not the past itself. What changed is how deeply they are finally seeing it. When someone begins seeing old moments through a new heart, they begin understanding what they should have understood much earlier. That realization is why their expression today may seem thoughtful, distant, or unexpectedly quiet. Because inside them, something is still unfolding. They are beginning to ask whether last night was only a passing emotional moment, or whether it revealed something they have delayed admitting for far too long. Do not skip now, because this next truth matters deeply. There are moments when people suddenly realize that someone has occupied more space in their heart than they ever intended. They may not say it immediately, they may even resist it, but once that understanding appears, everything starts connecting in ways they never noticed before. That is exactly where they are now. A small reminder today made everything stronger. It could have been hearing a name, seeing something familiar, remembering a shared detail, or simply sitting in silence long enough for the truth to rise again. Whatever triggered it, the feeling became impossible to ignore. What they once believed would fade is becoming clearer. Something huge is waiting for you, because what they feel is no longer remaining hidden in the same way. There is another reason this matters. Last night did not only bring emotion, it also brought reflection. They looked back further than expected. They thought about moments when they stayed silent, even though they could have spoken. They thought about times when they stepped away, even though they could have stayed closer. They thought about how often fear of uncertainty became stronger than honesty. For the first time, that reflection did not bring comfort. It brought a quiet realization. Some distances are created not because feelings are absent, but because feelings were never expressed clearly enough. Stay until the end, because the next shift has already begun. No announcement came, no plan was made. There was no dramatic event that everyone could see. There was only one realization. It arrived suddenly, fully formed, and it changed everything. That is what they are facing right now. Because it appeared without warning, they are trying to understand it carefully. They keep asking themselves why one thought continues returning, why one person keeps appearing during quiet moments, why certain memories seem brighter instead of fading, why one emotional shift from a single night has remained so strong throughout the entire day. The answer is becoming clearer than it has ever been before. Something important is waiting ahead for you, because once a person reaches true clarity inside, changes on the outside are never far away. There was another quiet moment today that mattered more than anyone around them realized. They imagined what life would feel like if nothing changed from this point forward. That thought did not bring comfort. Instead, it created discomfort. The kind of discomfort that appears when the heart begins to understand that staying silent may no longer feel easier than speaking. That feeling is powerful. It means silence is beginning to lose its sense of safety. And when silence loses its safety, a person starts moving closer to honesty. Even now, they are replaying certain moments with unusual attention. Things they once overlooked now seem full of meaning. Words that once felt ordinary now feel unforgettable. They are discovering that some memories only become stronger when the heart is finally ready to understand what they truly meant. That is why today feels heavier than they expected. They are no longer just remembering, they are understanding. And understanding changes everything. The person you love deeply is standing in the middle of a quiet turning point they never planned for. They may still appear calm and controlled on the outside, but inside, there is movement. Slow movement. Serious movement. Movement that cannot be denied. Part of them still wants certainty before doing anything. Part of them still wants more time. But another part has already accepted that something real revealed itself during the night. And pretending otherwise becomes more difficult with every passing hour. That is why their thoughts are no longer casual. They are deliberate now. Measured, repeated, persistent. Something important is waiting ahead, because once a feeling survives the entire night, returns throughout the day, and still refuses to disappear, it becomes impossible to dismiss as temporary. They know that now. And that understanding is changing how they look at the hours ahead. They are beginning to sense that what they once delayed may eventually require an answer. Not because anyone is forcing them, but because the heart cannot remain silent forever when the truth becomes too clear. One final realization has started forming within them. They are beginning to understand that last night may not be remembered as an ordinary night at all. It may become the exact moment they later recognize as the beginning of change. Some nights do not end when morning arrives. Some nights continue living inside a person until they finally act on what they felt. This may be one of those nights. What makes this even more significant is that evening is approaching again. With every passing hour, the thoughts they tried to control are becoming more organized, more direct, more difficult to dismiss. Sometimes the second half of a day reveals what the first half only hinted at. That is exactly what is happening now. Earlier, they wondered whether the feelings from last night would fade once daylight arrived. Now they know they did not fade. They stayed. They followed them through every quiet moment, every pause, every attempt to move through the day as if nothing had changed. That persistence changed everything. Feelings that return again and again are rarely random. They are signals from the heart, signals that no longer wish to be ignored. A powerful realization came when they compared today with many days that came before it. They noticed something important. This day does not feel ordinary. The surroundings are the same. The routine is the same. The world around them remains unchanged. Yet inside, something refuses to return to what it was. And suddenly they understood why. Last night opened a truth they had delayed facing. Some connections do not weaken simply because they remain unspoken. Silence may protect words, but silence does not erase what those words were protecting. That truth has become impossible to ignore. Then another thought appeared and changed the direction of everything they were feeling. For a brief moment, they imagined hearing your voice unexpectedly. They imagined seeing your name appear. They imagined what they would say if honesty arrived without warning. That imagination did not feel distant. It felt immediate. And that surprised them. People only imagine those moments so deeply when the heart has already moved closer than the mind intended. This matters because thoughts like these appear when inner resistance begins to weaken. There is another reason all of this feels important. They are no longer reflecting only on what happened last night. They are connecting it to things they ignored before. Small signs from earlier days now seem meaningful. Details they once dismissed now return carrying new weight. A delayed reply, an unfinished sentence, a memory that stayed longer than expected, a feeling they believed would pass but never truly disappeared. Now all those pieces are beginning to connect. And once hidden pieces start connecting, emotional uncertainty becomes much harder to maintain. Something else surprised them today. Even while trying not to think too deeply, their mind kept returning to the same question. What if this feeling has already become stronger than I admitted? That question stayed with them longer than expected. Deep down, they already sensed the answer. Silence is becoming meaningful in a different way now. They are no longer arguing so strongly against what they feel. Yesterday they may have resisted the thought. Today that resistance feels weaker. From the outside, that change may seem invisible. Inside, it is enormous. A person does not need dramatic action to begin changing. Sometimes the greatest shift happens when denial becomes too weak to continue. That is what is happening now. When denial grows weaker, truth grows louder. And truth has already started speaking clearly within them. They are beginning to accept that last night was not an emotional accident. It was a revealing moment. A moment when hidden feelings rose to the surface without permission and refused to leave. That is why emotional distance no longer feels natural. Now it feels questioned. And when distance starts feeling questioned, closeness begins to feel possible again. Another realization has appeared quietly. They are beginning to wonder whether the next step must really be something large. For the first time, they are realizing it may begin with something simple. A softer tone, a little more openness, a small effort, a different kind of attention. These are often the first signs that someone has changed internally, long before anyone else notices. The person you love deeply may still carry hesitation, but hesitation is no longer standing alone. Now it stands beside growing clarity. And clarity, once born, rarely disappears, especially when it was formed during a night powerful enough to make the entire following day feel different. That night is still speaking inside them, and what happens next may arrive sooner than even they expected. As this day moves toward its final hours, what they are feeling is no longer just reflection. It is becoming direction. A person can spend many hours questioning emotions, but eventually questions begin turning into quiet decisions. That moment may already be forming inside them. All day long they try to understand whether last night was only a moment of emotional intensity or something much more lasting. Now, after every repeated thought, every returning memory, and every silence that felt heavier than usual, one truth has become impossible to deny. What happened last night did not weaken when daylight arrived. It became clearer. And that is rare. Some feelings disappear in the morning. The strongest feelings become more visible. Tonight, while the world continues moving normally around them, they are carrying a private awareness they never expected to hold for this long. They know something inside them is no longer standing where it once stood. Even if they cannot explain every detail yet, they feel the difference. And that difference matters. Because when someone clearly senses an internal change, they begin seeing the future differently. For the first time, they are no longer asking only what happened last night. they are asking what happens next. That single question changes everything. They are imagining what honesty would look like if fear stepped aside. They are imagining what might happen if silence stopped making every decision. They are wondering whether certain words deserve to remain hidden forever, or whether the night that changed them arrived for a reason. That question did not appear easily. It arrived after hours of resistance, after hours of trying to remain emotionally unchanged. Now that resistance has become too weak to fully control what they feel. This is often how hidden emotional shifts become real movement. There was one more quiet realization. They noticed that even imagining distance now feels heavier than it once did. What used to feel manageable now feels incomplete. That matters because hearts only recognize incompleteness when they begin longing for clarity. And clarity has been growing inside them ever since last night. They are beginning to understand that certain people leave marks deeper than ordinary memory. No matter how much time passes, some presence remains untouched. Some connections continue living beneath routine, beneath silence, and beneath hesitation. Last night forced them to face that truth completely. That is why this day never returned to normal. Every hour carried the same message. Something can no longer continue exactly as before. The next days may reveal signs that become difficult to hide. A softer attention, a more thoughtful pause, a willingness to speak more openly, a different warmth where caution once existed. These changes rarely arrive dramatically. They begin quietly. But they are often created by very serious decisions inside the heart. The decision forming now is not accidental. It has been shaped by every memory they revisited, every feeling they tried to silence, every truth that refused to disappear. Sometimes a single night becomes the dividing line between how someone once felt and how they can no longer pretend to feel. This may be that dividing line. Even now they are likely returning to one final thought. If last night revealed this much, perhaps silence has already lasted long enough. That thought carries power, because once it settles deeply, it begins changing behavior little by little. And little by little is often how the biggest emotional changes become visible. Tonight, the person you love deeply may still appear calm on the outside, but inside, they are carrying something entirely different from what they carried before that night began. They have crossed from uncertainty into awareness, and awareness cannot be undone. Once the heart has seen clearly, it never fully returns to blindness. That is why what happened last night matters so much. It did not affect only one moment. It may quietly shape everything that follows from here.